Hello, agency owners. It's Charley Valher here, the host of the Agency Valley podcast, and today I am bringing you a special episode all about the books every agency owner should read. Now, I brought Kim Barrett back onto the show to come and do this episode with me because this is a topic we have discussed a lot, and it's something that we were both really into. Now, I really believe that reading is one of those habits and things someone can do that can completely transform your life and business for the better. Now, I wanted to tell a quick story that a few years back, I met a business owner, and I'll keep his name private because I haven't asked him if I can disclose this, but he was able to take his company from 1 mil to 10 mil in the space of about 3 to 4 years, which is a phenomenal effort. That's such a big leap to make, and you're really operating a completely different business when you make that type of leap. But I asked him, I looked him square in the face, and I said, what were the things you changed that allowed you to go from 1 mil to 10 mil? Like, what was the thing that made the difference? And he looked back at me and he said that the number one thing he changed is he went from reading for 30 minutes a day to 90 minutes a day. And it had a huge impact on me because at that time I was only reading maybe 20 to 30 minutes a day. And this is something that I have massively increased and upped in my own efforts. And I've seen it's had a huge impact on my life. Now, the books in this episode are specific for agency owners and tend to be a great reading list for any agency owner at any stage. We've intentionally picked books that are evergreen. They're not going to fade away or, not be useful to you at any point from there. And I highly, highly recommend you read them all. So that's it from me. Let's dive into the episode. If you do enjoy this, please make sure you subscribe to the show and share this with any other agency owner so we can help spread the word. And we are live on the Agency Valley podcast. It's Charley Valher here, and today I am joined once again by the one and only Kim Barrett from Your Social Voice. How you doing, Kim?
I am doing super well, Mr. Charley, sir. How are you?
Doing well. We got some good feedback on our last episode of the Agency Valley podcast. It was nice to get some people kind of, I suppose, it's always nervous when you start something new and you don't know how the people are going to respond. And to hear some nice words was really comforting. So I'm thrilled we're doing more episodes.
Yeah, me too. It was great to be on the first one, so pumped to be back with you.
Well, today's episode, I'm excited by this one because we're actually doing the books every agency owner should read. And I have a feeling that we'll probably really enjoy what each other picks here because we're very in tune with these ones. But nonetheless, an exciting topic and some must-reads for agency owners. Did you have a hard time picking your books or selecting them?
It was because obviously for me, there's many books that I've read which kind of fall more, I would say, into the advertiser hat, where it's like, cool, as an advertiser, these are great, but if I look at a level above as an agency owner, does that book still make sense as one of the best? I'm like, weighing them all up, throwing them on the floor, saying, no, redo it. But I think I've got a pretty good list here myself.
Do you know what? I actually had that same challenge. There were some books, I actually got into my Kindle, which I've had for a very long time. And I was scrolling back and I was looking, going, okay, well, I've got to pick the best 3 books here that I think are the most important for agency owners. And some of them I realized had gone out of date very quickly. They were great tactical books at the time. But I'm pretty confident that some of the, putting red borders on your Facebook ads doesn't work anymore.
Who knows? It could be coming back.
Yeah, well, so, when I made my list, I've gone, well, all the books I pick, I don't want to be tactical because I think the best tactical things of how to do X or how to do SEO, how to build a website, how to do WordPress, how to do Facebook ads. I actually think that coaches and mentors are the best avenues from that. So none of my picks are tactical. They're all books that I think are more of an evergreen approach and a different angle.
Interesting. I'm very curious to hear them all now.
Ooh, all right. Well, I think we should just dive straight into this one. It's going to be an interesting one. Now, would you like to go first, or do you want me to crack the lid on this one?
I'll let you crack the lid on this one.
Okay. So number 1 is actually a book I read recently, which is called You Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. And the reason I picked this book is I think it is overwhelmingly probably the best book I've ever read on mindset and I suppose personal growth. And when you read the David Goggins story, you can't help but just be listening there and just going, oh my God, I've got it so easy. Like, I've really got it so easy. And I even found that the perspective it gave me towards business and life and work was just amazing from the mindset it was able to create from me. And I think if you're an agency owner, what separates those who, I suppose, do okay from those who do really, really well, I think mindset is a really big part of it. So in the kind of mindset category, I've given You Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins the spot. And that's what we're going to open up with on this can of worms here.
Nice, man. I do like that. And it's made me, if anyone ever listened to Confessions podcast, I do like to freestyle a little bit. So I had two chosen, and I had another one I knew would come to me for a certain reason, which I think is my next one that I would share. So again, in that mindset category, this one's actually pretty, again, it's probably, I'm like 9/10 of the way through it. So I'm happy to kind of throw out the recommendation for it. And I actually had it in play. I'll tell a little quickly story if that's okay. I had it in play the other day. So yesterday was a pretty rough day at the office. Lots of different things going on. And I just probably wasn't in the best mindset myself. Like, lots of things happening. I'm leaving on Thursday for a week. Pretty crazy. So I went down to play squash. I play squash if I can every day at the end of the day. Good sweat session and a good little workout. And I was just getting, like, normally I'm competitive in squash. Like, with the guys I play with, like, I can win games. Sometimes it's pretty even. Last night, I was just getting flogged. It was like, some of the shots I was like looking, I didn't even hit the ball. I was just like swinging and missing. I was like, what the hell? What is going on here? This does not make sense. And then I quickly, like, it was the last game, I was about to leave, and I was like down like 6-0. And I was like, okay, like, there's only 9 points here, so they're not very far off winning. So I just shifted, and I was like, okay, cool. Like, as opposed to getting all upset, you just got and butthurt that you just lost the last 4 games badly, I was like, cool. In my head, I started singing the lyrics to the song "All I Do Is Win." So I just had that going, and then I started playing, and I got back up to, then I was like 2, 3, 4, it was like 5, 6, and then it was like 6, 8, 6, 9. So I came back pretty well. Most points I scored all game, but what I likened it to doing, which is what this book was all about, is creating an alter ego. And so the alter ego effect is the recommendation by Todd Herman. And he likened it to singers, sports stars, etc., that when they walk on the field, they embody a different personality, or they walk on the stage, they embody a different personality. But that also can come across in business. And he gives so many good examples, but also tactical ways that you can apply that, because when you go into a business meeting, not always is the person who you exactly are right this second going to be the best person to get the outcome that you want. Sometimes you might have to be a hard ass. Sometimes you may have to, like, have high levels of negotiation. And if you personally are not used to that, sometimes it can help to step in and go, cool, well, this is like, if I'm Kim, I'm bringing in someone else and create a new name and alter ego for that person who comes into play in that scenario. And I've been using it and playing with that over the last week or so in squash. And I've definitely noticed an improvement in my game when I go in. And it's like, cool, I'm going to, like, mine is Michael Jordan. I'm like, I feel like he always just goes out and dominates. And that's what I feel like when I go out there. And then I've started to apply similar to business, and someone who is probably a very hard ass and is not aggressive, but is hard in his approach, is someone like Grant Cardone. So I've been kind of listening to a few of his things and trying to take some of his approaches in and going, cool, if I'm not doing this, it's Grant Cardone. He doesn't care. Like, he doesn't give 2 craps about what the outcome is, unless it's what he is looking for to get, like, and make sure it's obviously win-win on both sides. But he is hard about what he does. So I think by being able to take that approach into business dealings is tremendously powerful.
I'll tell you what's really interesting here is that both of us, straight off the ranks, have gone something to do with mindset. Mindset has been the opener here. Now, I haven't actually read that book to comment, but I can already see I'm very, very fascinated by it. And we'll probably buy it right after this podcast.
Yeah, but I think it's, as an agency owner, it's like, because you have so many things going on, you need, like, I'll even, like, broaden it to even business owner, but especially for agency owners, you have so many things going on. If you don't have a strong mindset, if you don't have the ability to deal with things coming in, that sometimes can be tremendously good and other times be tremendously bad, then you're really going to struggle, I think, if you don't have a mindset that's going to help you get through those things.
Yeah, I'll second that. I think it's easy to get knocked off course if you do anything to do with the internet. And I'll just describe a few right now. If there was a Google Penguin update or Panda or whatever zoo animal they're updating with, if you have anything to do with Google, like, that's going to be a tough week. And mindset becomes important. The next WordPress update, if you're a web developer, I'm sure is going to break things, or WooCommerce or Shopify. Like, there's so many things in that space that are going to cause like huge weeks. Kim, you could probably relate to this one. Like, some weeks Facebook ads just don't work no matter how good your ads are. Like, they have some ups and downs. You're going to have some client resistance there. So that's a huge one. And the same with like every area of the internet. I don't think there's one that is immune. People, the rest.
Yeah. As soon as you rely on technology, it's like you're gonna have a bad time at some point. It's just guaranteed.
Yeah, so like mindset is the thing that gets you through. I really, really believe that. And I think we're both putting a really big point on this. So I like it. We're starting strong here. Mindset is the opening category, and I'm definitely going to buy that book. I'll get back to you if I like it or not, though.
Yeah. I love it. What's your number 2?
All right, so the second book I'm going to go with, it's actually 2 books, but it's kind of 1 book. Okay, so I got to preface it. So it's Get a Grip and Traction by Gino, Wickman and Payton. And just for reference, is like Get a Grip is the story version, and then Traction is like the textbook version. So they're actually kind of the same book, and they share the same ideas. But I think if you're someone that wants an enjoyable book to read where it's like a fable that helps you learn, then Get a Grip is definitely the better one. And if you're like a textbook nerd and you prefer to like get diggity in the systems of things, then Traction is the one to read. And I've read them both. And the reason I put this in my list is that I think this is the best book or books that actually teaches someone how to run a business. And I think that's something that is not documented well elsewhere. And I also think that the way they've gone about it is very, very evergreen. So that is taking my spot number 2.
I like that. I haven't read the first one, the Fable version. I've read Traction. So I'm definitely going to have to update my Audible account after this podcast as well. No, I like that. That's very good.
I just find what's funny that Traction was written first, and I think they worked out that, hang on, this is a very dry read, which it is. Surely you thought the same.
There's some flavour to it.
Oh, man. I won't lie. Traction is a harder read of the 2. Definitely is. But it doesn't discern it from being incredibly valuable. And one of the things I look at in the agency world today is like, I even look at it, and I've gone back and looked at this book more recently because I love what they have in the book, which is called the Level 10 Meeting. But even to this day, I read it a long time ago, and then I read it today. I was like, this is as relevant as ever, and still like a super powerful way to run an online business and an agency. And I think if you can like take the mindset of David Goggins and then run the actual business in the Traction system, it's a heavily strong evergreen way to go about running an agency.
Yeah, 100%. Now, it probably feeds into the next book that I'll share. My number 2 would be, I didn't get to read it at the beginning of my agency, which I wish I did, but it's Breeding Gazelles by Dan Bradbury. Now, the reason why I throw this one out there is because I find that, especially with agencies at the beginning and as they're working and they're scaling, it can be sporadic. And sometimes what happens is like you will have crazy periods of growth, and then you may have periods of slight decline or flatness and things like that. But I always find that anyone that I see that has an agency, regardless of kind of industry or what they're doing, they all have at some point a period of sporadic growth. And I think that Breeding Gazelles gives you a great understanding of how to like deal with that. It's like trying to capture a storm in a bottle type thing. I think it does give a great idea and insight, but also just reaffirms it's like, hey, it's okay. You're not alone. There's all these other people that have had very similar experiences. And to me, I think it was something that really like it struck a chord, and I made lots of adjustments to what I was doing at the time based on what I read in that book. And for me, it was just like, I was like, oh, they're speaking my language. So this is me. Like this book is written about me. It's great. And I think it made a huge impact on all the decisions I made after that as well.
Do you know what's interesting, Kim? Do you want to know something very interesting? I didn't put that in my list because I was certain you would put it in your list. And I was like, I reckon I can save this one. So that one was definitely an honourable mention for me as well. I think that book is absolutely fantastic, and the way particularly it describes staff, about the hiring and when to hire and why, and then management through numbers and leverage points, I thought was fantastic. I love that book, and much like you, I wish I read that early on before I ever started my agency. It would have been a big help. What's your favourite part of breeding gazelles? How's it been the most helpful to you?
Well, I think definitely, like you mentioned, some of the staffing parts was good, but I think there was just some of the management aspects of it as well really helped, because I think sometimes, like when it is a growing, like you're growing fast and it is taking off, like it literally can feel like you're in a plane that's kind of held on by lackey bands and paper clips, and you're like shaking as you take off. So knowing how to kind of repair that as you're in the air, I would say, is something that I found really, really helpful. And I took so many notes, I remember, from it, and looking at it, and just the ways to rethink about different things that were happening in the business at the time was so powerful.
It's funny, I think back to like way back in the day when we were just like, I'll say young little tackers doing our best in the world. When my agency, like I feel like I stayed in like the 0 to 10 grand a month category for like a good while, like almost 12 months, I'm pretty sure. But then the 10 to let's say 50 grand a month or 60 grand a month, like was done in like 3 months under, right? It was this sporadic period. And I resonated a lot with breeding gazelles into that period of my life, is because like when you crack your winner and like things all start happening, it's trying to just contain a storm. It's ridiculously interesting, like what life is like and how intense it is and where you get stuck, and it's not in the areas you think you're going to get stuck. So I'll back that one. I think breeding gazelles is a huge, huge win. I love that you added to the list, but you are a little bit predictable, just going to say.
Well, I actually, it was not on my list until 2 minutes ago. So I feel lucky. Only because of your last mention did it pop up. So interesting. All
right. Well, I'm gonna dig into this next one. Okay. So inevitably, right, this is a fascination of mine, is that I believe, and this isn't just agencies, but it does definitely include agencies, culture and people is a big letdown. I feel like this is a weak point, Achilles heel of a lot of businesses, is their ability to kind of create a good culture and then also have people involved in that culture. And it's only after experiencing a bad culture and the effects of that do you realize how important culture is. And I know you take it very seriously. We take it incredibly seriously at Outsourcing Angel now, is like culture is everything. Like it comes first. But the book that really kind of put the pinnacle on people and culture for me, and like actually gave me the ability to like, oh, how do we do culture? You know, like how do we make it practical? What do I need to look for? Like what's the steps? Was a book called Tribal Leadership by Dave Logan. And this is still one of my all-time favorites because of the way he's described things in that book. So, you know, coming into my theme, you know, we've got mindset number 1, we've got how to like run the business number 2 with get a grip and traction, and then number 3 is the area of people, and I feel like people was something that is the must-do area for agency owners. So Tribal Leadership by Dave Logan gets the points there for me.
Oh, nice, man. You're just copying my flow. You didn't even know. Because next on my list is literally a book called Culture is Everything by Tristan White.
No kidding, there's a book called that?
Yeah, by Tristan White. So he says like the number 1 place to work in Australia, I think it's like 3 years in a row. Physio, I don't know if it's called Physio Callers, but they're physios. And so he literally wrote the book, and it's called, Culture is Everything. So it's a tremendous read, and look, I've read it. It's quite a small book, and I've read it a couple of times, and it just reaffirms how important people are in the culture of a workplace. And as like you've said, I've worked in places that I would say probably had bad or toxic workplace culture, and something I never want to bring across, and something I constantly bring myself up on, and try and make sure that we always improve upon. Like even last at Christmas time, we had some of our assistant team over from Outsourcing Angels came over to Australia with us, went down to Margaret River, celebrated Christmas, and I think it's very easy to, depending on where parts of your team are, which I've experienced before, like to be excluded from things, and it doesn't really feel that good. when that happens. So there's so many takeaways I have from that. But a culture is a big thing that we focus on. I think then you can also see very easily when people come in, it's like, cool, would they fit the culture or would they not? And it's very easy to make decisions on that, you know, albeit asterisks if you do have a good culture to start with, to make sure that they fit in with that.
Well, I love you brought 2 books to this that I haven't read. Right. I really do so far. And it's funny that they're kind of in line with the books I have read and have found really important. So I think the areas we're considering the highest priority says a lot. It really, really does. And I love, you know, that was something I think, you know, once upon a time, me and Lynn at Outsourcing Angel used to joke that it took us like 4 years to work out why people would spend money on branding instead of like doing a Fiverr logo. And then the other joke was that, you know, it took us 4 years to work out why you would spend money on like culture or like flying people in to meet or running group activities or HR, because we're like, you know, surely these people like get along. But I feel like the deeper you get into business, the more important those areas start to stand out, start to be important.
Yeah, 100%. I reckon it's just a super important thing, especially when you're growing. And as an agency, I think especially because you do have, most of the time, like a lot of agencies have pretty dispersed team as well. Like some have everyone in one location or maybe multiple and several, and it makes it so much easier for the team cohesion, I think.
Kind of brings up an interesting topic, though. I mean, many of us, especially in agency world, actually, I've got to say mostly in agency world here, have virtual teams. Like, I think virtual is pretty much the standard now if you have an agency in some form. But I think even if you do have virtual people, like, there are ways to cultivate a virtual culture. Like, there really, really are. It shouldn't be an isolated, toxic experience because you have a virtual business.
Yeah, 100%. I think you definitely am. But I think that's why it gets harder, and that's why also you need to have a bigger focus on it. Like, it's easy to have a culture when everyone's sitting in each other's pockets, but when everyone's separate, it becomes a lot harder.
Yeah, definitely. Ooh, so, I mean, we've got no tactical books. I actually expected a copywriting book might come up or something like that, but it's really interesting that we've picked essential books for agency owners, or the books agency owners must read, and it's like mindset, how to run a business, and culture, which I think is truly, truly fascinating. Now, I've got one more on my list, but I know this is a particular favorite of yours, so I thought we might actually like take this one as a joint one to add in here together. How do you feel about that?
I'm down with that. I did have another one. I'll backburner that for the next list, just because I like to, hyper perform. But yeah, let's do this one together.
Okay, so this is a joint pick. You know, we really tried not to pick the same books here, guys. Like, offer unique perspective, which is fascinating how close they've ended up anyway. But the last book I've got on my list, and our joint contribution to this call, is a book called The Goal by Eli Goldratt. And I'll say this right now, if you are going to read this book, you must get the Audible version and listen to it. It is undoubtedly the best audiobook I think ever done. I don't know any better.
Yeah. I mean, there's some sections there I get a little bit worried about. It sounds like, if you're watching it visually, you're like, this sounds kind of like a 60s porno with the music that they use. But the content, it is a good listen. Like, you definitely don't get bored in it, even though, like, if you were to study the principles, and I've seen some of the lectures from Dr. Eli Goldratt on these specific ones, it's like, if you watch those versus listening to the goal, like, it's so completely different. But I can see what, like, they had to do it that way to make sure they get the point across.
I just want to make sure I describe this, because obviously some people who are listening to this episode won't have heard it. So what makes this audiobook so good is they've literally got different voices for the different people in the book. So every time someone else speaks, you hear another voice, and they use sound effects to articulate things. So if he's in the car, it sounds like he's in the car. Or if he's in a factory, it sounds like he's in a factory. Or if he's at home, it sounds like he's at home. But it's one of the few books where I found myself like actually completely immersed and sucked in to it, to the point where I would like go for a walk and not realize I'd be gone for like 90 minutes. Like, it'd be like an hour and a half. I'm like, oh crap, I've got to go home. But I want to get to the why, like, apart from the fantastic production, that gets top points. But the why I feel like this book is such a must for agency owners is that I think it covers really, really well about, the title kind of says it, is like understanding what the goal for your agency is. And I'm not going to give away what that means in the book, but I really think that's an important thing. And then the second one is it got me to think about the production line of my business and team in a completely different way. So I don't care what type of agency it is, like all of us have deliverables every month, whether we're trying to get, ads accounts ready, trying to do content, trying to do social media, websites, the works, and like to push those works through our business and perceive it like a factory and a conveyor belt, so to speak, was a huge shift in my thinking and dramatically improved productivity once I understood this.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think the benefit as well, like the theory of constraints is what it's based on. So there's plenty of other content out there around it, but essentially as well, it's like if you have a hose that's kinked, right? You may have 100 kinks within it that's stopping water from flowing through, which is in your business. However, at any one time, there's only one kink that is currently stopping that water flow. So, like, literally, I'm a simple person, right? Thinking of my business like a hose made it very easy for me. I'm like, cool. Where is the current kink? It's like at the top near the tap. Okay, let's unkink that. But being able to break down not only the entirety of the business, but then also each area and do the same thing. It's like one of those, I always like to think of like babushka dolls, where you got the big one and then you undo it and the little one. It's like every area has its own theory of constraints, its own basically hose that can go through and be unkinked. So by thinking of it that way, I was like, it just makes so much sense to me, being as simple as I like to try and keep it. And it just made things so much easier when I read that. And apparently it's even easier if anyone wants. There's a comic book of it now. So they've even refined it even easier for people to get through. But by understanding that, it just made me feel so much less stressed about workflow, production, etc. Because it's like, it's just like this. It's just like he said in the book. It's like that. And, it's very much easier to problem solve as well.
Yeah, I love that analogy you used as well with the king toes, because I think that's the best visual representation to like see in your head of like, okay, I start to understand theory of constraints. But something that's really funny is I actually used it today. Like we're actually working out how to get the most content out and published in the team at the moment. And it's funny that this has become the theory, the thinking. It's like just assessing where are we getting bottlenecked, or where's that kink in the hose, and like how do we undo it to like unlock more productivity. And I just think it's such a good thing to have in a business.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And yeah, like you said, yeah, that's probably one overall that I give 11 out of 10 to read.
Yeah, definitely. Now, would you like to add anything else to the list, Kim, or do we feel like we've covered the most important books for agency owners?
I just want to throw this one out there because it'll just be quick. But Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. Like, I think, that one is one I just have to slide in there because...
Disagree.
Disagree?
Yeah, disagree.
I want to hear your disagreement very quickly.
All right, first off, right, I've got nothing against Mike. And I actually like a lot of his other books. I think there's some really unique concepts in there. But Profit First to me, didn't hit a home run. It really didn't. And I want to probably understand why. I think if you're doing nothing with your numbers and nothing with your books and you see Profit First, like it's like an awakening experience. It's like the first time you have sugar in your life. You're like, oh my God, what is this? Or the first time you've had a coffee, you're like, what is this like magic drink? I feel alert, but I don't by any means think it is the best information on the topic. And I feel like Profit First falls down as you get bigger and have more complexities coming into your business. So it's a great starting point, and I think it's a great beginner book. But I think if you would want to get more from your numbers and like actually drive management and change from your numbers, I feel like Keith Cunningham's book, The Blueprint for a Wildly Successful Business, like eats that for breakfast. I feel like you get more out of it.
Yeah, but that's interesting because I think it depends on what you think the outcome of the book is. If you think the outcome of the books is proper financial management, etc., that's not it. It's Profit First to me is going inside of the head of a entrepreneur, an agency owner, and compartmentalizing and making things easier for them and taking things away from them, away from their handle and their control. It's like, when you have a little kid and you hide the lollies on the top shelf and they can't see them, they don't know they're there. Every now and then you can give them a lolly. So definitely not from it. I don't think it's a book on financial management. I think it's a book on helping an agency owner be able to take things outside of them that they don't actually need and don't need to be aware of, and then leaving everything else that's on the plate in front of them there for them. Because I think it's very easy to get overwhelmed as an agency owner with so many things going on, to refine it and keep it simple. And yes, by all means, also make sure you have effective financial management. And I think you also get 2 stars because you probably have been influenced by your partner over the years as well, so it's probably helped. But I think on that side of things, I think it's brilliant at doing that. Even if you have a good understanding, just by taking, I think, some of those things away, to me, I thought was a brilliant way of helping business owners and especially agency owners be able to take some of those things away from themselves, so that they're not looking at it, expecting it, they're not incorporating it into their cash flows and things like that. I think it's really, really powerful.
That is actually a really interesting perspective. And I respect your opinion. I really do, Kim. Like, you're a very, very smart guy. And I think you also highlighted something that I live with a bookkeeper / accountant / CFO. So, like, you know, financial knowledge isn't scarce in my household. I actually feel like I've been the whip has been cracked since the inception of my business. I've never been able to get away with anything. But that is actually a really interesting takeaway. I think there's certainly value in it. And it's interesting to see, I suppose from your perspective, it's interesting that that's what you took from it. Like, that was the big takeaway, where that is not what I took away from it at all. At all.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, you've always been much more well-versed in definitely on managing the numbers very, very specifically, whereas I've probably been... Like, I look at them, I manage them, I make decisions based upon it, but I probably fly more by the seat of my pants until like probably the last year. So I think in that growth phase, even doing, you know, like 60, 70, 80K a month, like, I think sometimes, especially when you grow fast, it's easy to put to miss some of the things where that for me was just like, I can just make a few simple changes here, and then I can get back to properly managing things financially, using especially the book that you mentioned, and I know some of the strategies that you and B also share as well.
It's interesting though, but like, you know, if we weigh it up, like the gap between like doing profit first is the example. Let's say you follow that system exactly and doing nothing is huge. Like the gap between doing nothing and profit first, I think, is fantastic, but there is definitely a level up from that. So I think I'll acknowledge that there is, if you're someone that's, let's just say numbers aren't your strong area and you don't want them to be, then this is so much better than doing nothing and a great entry point.
Yeah.
All right, Kim. Well, that is our massive list. We will make sure that in the show notes we have all the books we've recommended in there, so you can click away and get these into your agency life, because I think they're going to make a massive difference. Now, we're going to wrap up the episode here. If you have enjoyed this episode of Agency Valley, then please make sure to subscribe to the show, number 1. And then number 2, please share this around. Like, make sure you share it with another agency owner so that you can make an impact on their life. So thank you, Kim, for joining me. That's it for this episode.
Thanks for having me.